Achayim, v'livracha, to life and to blessings. Ah, life is good. Death, is it bad? Most people would say it is. But how could you say death is bad? If it's coming from God, He's the one who gives life. That we would say is good. But He's also the one who brings about death. So if it's coming from God, how could it be bad? To say that death is painful, sometimes a person passes away and they suffer a lot and it's painful. Painful is exactly what it is, painful. But painful doesn't mean that it has a subjective point of view about it and how we morally classify it as bad. Saying something lashon hara, ill about a loved one for no reason, just because you're agitated, that's bad. Thinking negatively about a loved one because they triggered you, that's bad. Because that's a moral judgment. That God says that those things are not appropriate. But death, something coming from God. Now, of course, if someone takes their own life, that's bad. The act of taking and doing. Not talking about that. Death as life comes from God, and therefore it can't be bad. It's painful, perhaps for the person who passes on. It is painful for those who remain. Sure, absolutely. But we should not ascribe to it bad. But one thing it is, death is an atonement. It's a cleansing for the soul. It might sound a little odd, but that's the reality. Death brings a cleansing to the soul. How do we understand that? Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadeshim in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We begin and conclude today the 28th letter. And this letter, it is written to Rav Levi Yitzchak Barditchev, a very holy, righteous individual who lost his son Rav Meir. And this is a letter of consolation. In the previous letter was written to the Hasidim in the land of Israel that had lost their mentor, their teacher, their Rebbe, Mendel Haradoker. This one is written to actually his mechutin. Their grandchildren married each other, so they became related later on in life. And he begins with a piece of the Talmud that asks the question, why is the death of Miriam is the older sister of Moses, of Moshe Rabbeinu, a righteous woman, why was that juxtaposed to the red heifer, the laws of the red heifer? This is in Parshas Chukas in the book of Numbers, Bamidbar. The Torah portion begins with the laws of the red heifer, which the laws of red heifer are about someone who became impure through coming in contact with a human corpse and now needs to be cleansed from that impurity of contact with a human corpse. And that's the process of the red heifer. So the Talmud asks the question, why are they juxtaposed to each other in the Torah, in the Bible, right? So the Talmud tells us, because just as the heifer affects atonement, cleansing for the person who came in contact and became spiritually impure because of coming in contact with a corpse. So likewise, the passing of the righteous also is an atonement. It's also an atonement. And not just an atonement for themselves because they're righteous. It's an atonement for the generation. For the generation. Fascinating. So everybody's passing is an atonement. The righteous, it becomes an atonement, not just for them, but for the generation itself. We'll see more about that. Ask the Alter Rebbe on that teachings of the Talmud, why would it be juxtaposed? Why would it be juxtaposed to the laws of the red heifer that is done outside of Temple Mount? The process of it, the purification, and Torah only calls it an atonement, but really it's a cleansing from the impurity of coming, again, contact with a corpse, all right? Wouldn't it be more appropriate that it should be similar to a korban chatos, a sin offering that's brought on on Temple Mount, in the Holy Temple itself? And that is an atonement rather than a cleansing, right? Wouldn't it be more appropriate? Okay, so with that, the Alter Rebbe explains what's the difference between a sacrifice on the altar, right, and the cleansing that comes through the heifer. What is the difference? So, in the mystical dimension, which will be taken from the teachings of the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, excuse me. The whole idea of a sacrifice is something that has to come from the person. Someone did something inadvertently, a sin inadvertently. So the atonement is coming from the person because the person needs to do tshuva, to repent, right? The sacrifice on the altar is this concept, this idea of that it's coming from within, meaning from below. It's called feminine waters, right? Meaning it has to be initiated by the person. And that's the idea of the animal in me is represented on the animal on the altar. So it's initiated by the person. Their animal that did the wrong is now, right, metaphorically on the altar, right? The animal, which gets its vitality from klipas noiga, and it's elevated. Where is it elevated? The animal, the physical animal on the altar, representing the animal soul in me, it is elevated to the Merkava, the chariot above, that bears a throne, the Ezekiel's chariot, that has on it the face of an ox, a face of an eagle, also has it a lion and a man. But important over here is the two is ox, which refers to the animal offerings on the altar, and to the eagle that represents the fowl that is also offered on the altar. In other words, it's elevated to that level of the divine above. Everything in this physical world devolves from the spiritual world, right? So the physical animal comes from the spiritual animal. Spiritual animal is, again, Ezekiel's throne that has 4 posts on it, the throne, and these are the four, that we just mentioned, right? Now, once you elevate it, then what comes is the masculine waters, male waters, which are the feminine is down up, and that's what you did by the offering. But then comes up down. Yeah, what goes up must come down, like rain. 2 drops of rain of mist go up, so a drop shall come down of actual rain. So this is what's done through the offering on the altar that now descends from there, right, from above, because what you did was make a union from above, from male and female qualities of the divine, which are the 6 divine attributes, which is male, and Malchus, sovereignty, kingship, which is feminine. So through this offering on the altar, you create a divine union above that through that union now precipitates downwards divine light and energy. That now is something that's vested within here that brings atonement to the individual. They are atoned from within, just like food is ingested, the animal as food is ingested. So likewise, the divine light is a light that can be now ingested, figuratively speaking, obviously. We're talking about a divine light. As food is ingested, that it becomes now a part of you, and that light now becomes the atonement. Ooh, powerful idea. That's what an offering is. That's an offering on the altar is. But it's a limited divine light because it's ingestible, right? What you ingest is limited, right? You can only eat so much, so to speak. So and therefore the atonement is only for inadvertent sin. Inadvertent sin is sin, right? If you accidentally, profane Shabbos, but you didn't mean to, it's still a sin. Why? Because obviously you weren't mindful of Shabbos, and therefore you transgressed. If you were mindful, you wouldn't have transgressed. This is where you get into atonement. But it's limited only to inadvertent sin. That's opposed to, now that's what's called a sin offering. Now, the red heifer, which brings a cleansing to someone who came in contact with a corpse, death, right? That's different. That is not a down-up story, as we just expressed. It's an up-down. It's starting from up, right? In other words, you're not offering anything. In the sacrifice on the altar, you're offering the animal, representing your animal, right? Mm-hmm. Here, you're not giving anything. You're receiving. What are you receiving? You're receiving the waters that are sprinkled with the cedar wood and the hyssop, right? That's all of an idea of sanctity from above that's drawn down below to the person, right? And therefore, the process is called Kiddush Mei Chatos, sanctification of purifying waters. Sanctification, right? We don't call the sacrifice a sanctification. It's your offering of you on the altar of, right, that ascends upwards, that now brings back down, yes, and a limited light that can be, so to speak, ingested. That's why it's limited, right? As we'll see over here compared to this. Here we're starting top down, right? These are sanctified waters. This is not like rain. This is like dew, D-E-W, right? Dew isn't about, dew does not come because mist rises up and comes down. Dew is completely from above. It's a phenomena that comes from above and reaches down here below, right? In other words, it's a spontaneous uh, um, arousal from above. There's no antecedent to it that arouses it, dew, as opposed to rain. So rain is like the offering on the altar. Rain, first the mist has to rise. The altar, you have to bring your offering. It's you on the altar, figuratively speaking, right? That's you, your offer from below to above, and then precipitates the divine light from above, right? It precedes it to precipitate the downfall of divine energy that brings atonement for the inadvertent limited sin. Here, it's not that way, right? It's due. It is the um, it's sanctifying pure waters, right? Sanctification is something that is from above, right? Is from above. And now that sanctification is called supreme divine wisdom. And because it's supreme divine wisdom, it reaches, in other words, this is starting from an element higher than in the sacrifice, you reach to the source of animal, the throne, the divine throne above, as we said, that has the eagle and the ox on, right? You're reaching that spiritual level. Here you're reaching the spiritual level of divine wisdom. The divine wisdom has the possibility of transforming darkness to light, death into life. And that's why this is the process that you go through, right? When someone comes in contact with death. How do you transform? How do you come from death to life? That's a transformation. That comes from a higher place that is able, that transcends death and life, that can now bring from the death contact with death, right? We're talking about you're impure because of contact with death. Then now that becomes transformed into life, that you become pure, that you become pure. This is the idea, by the way, of a parallel to this is the idea of the breaking of the vessels, right? In the world of confusion, in Atzilus, that the vessels were small and the lights were so great. Imagine taking a barrel and pouring into this cup, it would just spill all over and break everything, right? That's the breaking of the vessels, that the shards that came from the breaking of the vessels fell down into all the worlds and into this world. And when we do a physical act of a mitzvah, what are we doing? We're transforming that darkness of that material object that is covering over the divine. We're transforming it into light, divine light, through the act of the mitzvah. So that's a parallel to this idea of the red heifer, that you're now taking the sanctification of these pure waters and you're transforming a person who is impure on account of being in contact with death, and now transforming that death into purity of life. Very powerful idea. Okay, did you get that? If you didn't get it, you'll get it on the return. Okay? By the way, folks, I just want to let you know that we're having problems with Facebook, and the class is not on Facebook now. Hopefully that will be rectified, but it may not. There They're making some issues. Perhaps if everybody would contact Facebook and say that Tanya rabbis are missing him. Anyways, okay. That is a prelude to understand why Miriam, who's a righteous woman, and her passing that the Torah speaks about is juxtaposed not to the offering on the altar, but to the red heifer, right? Which is a purification of someone who comes in contact with death. By the way, like going into going into a cemetery, you come in contact with death and you need purification. Today we're not concerned with this because we're in the times of exile. We don't have a holy temple, but in times of holy temple, you could only do the service or bring an offering, be on Temple Mount if you were pure. If you had come in contact with a corpse, you could not go on Temple Mount. You had to go through the purification process of the heifer, the sanctifying pure waters.
Before bringing the offering?
Before bringing an offering, right. You have to be cleansed. You have to be cleansed. So now we can understand why a righteous woman in Miriam, who representing all righteous people, is juxtaposed to the red heifer. This is to tell us, because what happens when a holy person passes away, they bring cleansing and atonement to the generation, as we mentioned earlier, but in a transcendent way, not the way we explained before, ingested light, but encompassing light that is greater than what a light that could be merely ingested. In other words, minimal, right? Right. This is known as the sphere of Chokhmah. And this is in the 13 divine attributes of God's divine compassion, which is, what we say every day in our prayers. Hashem, Hashem, kel rachom v'chanun erech hapayim v'rav chesed v'yemes. Neitzer chesed. Neitzer chesed is the eighth. Eighth is then a number of transcendent. 7 is the cycle of the week. 8 is beyond, right? As Hanukkah was a miracle of 8 days, right? So 8 represents that which is beyond, transcendent. So in the divine compassion of God, there's 13 attributes of God mentioned. The 8th is the tufts of the celestial beard, Neitzer Chesed. Means God's divine will, that he expresses his kindness. And that is, when does he express his this transcendent will? When does it radiate? When is it revealed? When righteous people pass away. At the time of their passing, everything that they accomplished during their lifetime is now revealed in this world. Right? The lifetime that they surrendered themselves to God and they were just a mere reflection of God. As they would say in the Shema, Hashem Echad, the oneness of God, they lived as a reflection of the oneness of God. That's what a righteous person is. Nothing else but that. So when they pass away, that which they reflected in their entire world is now fully revealed. And because of that phenomenal revelation, right? Which was not revealed during their lifetime. Interesting. Not revealed beyond themselves. That's the point, right? That's the point. It wasn't revealed beyond themselves, right? Within them, they experienced that, right? But beyond themselves, not. When does it reveal beyond themselves? The time of passing. How does it reveal itself? By bringing atonement, by bringing cleansing to the generation, to that generation, and not since it's a just like it parallels the red heifer in its cleansing. What does it cleanse? Death to life, darkness into light. So likewise over here, it brings a cleansing, even not just for inadvertent sins, which is not complete darkness, but for um, um, premeditated sin. Even for those sins, it brings an atonement. But that doesn't justify the person and doesn't give you full, a bill of a full clean slate that now, okay, now I can do whatever I want. The righteous pass away and I got a clean slate now. That's not what it means. You're still responsible for your actions, of course, but it brings a cleansing. It brings a cleansing to the individual that is transcendent, just as red heifer brings, to darkness into light, transforms darkness into light, transforms death into life. So likewise, the death, the passing of a holy person, a righteous person, is able to bring atonement and cleansing even for sins that were um, not inadvertent, that were deliberate. Those are true, complete evil that's transformed now into bringing an atonement. Very powerful.
When you say it's for that generation, what is what?
Well, the time of that generation, that the people that of that generation that lived then when that person passed. Yeah. So, so when the Alter Rebbe passed in his time, so he brought a cleansing, an atonement to the people living in his time, right? The Rebbe in our generation.
Still affecting positively today because
Yep, it's still the generation, still his generation. Yeah. So here we have the idea, mystical idea, um, of bringing a cleansing and an atonement. Other religions kind of stole this idea and corrupted it. But this is, in its pureness, this idea, which is, we see the parallels in everything. We understand, very powerful idea. So what comes out of over here is, the passing of a righteous person. It is very painful. Over 30 years ago, when the Rebbe physically left this world, extremely painful. Did that mean it was bad? No. Did it hurt? Yes. Did it hurt greatly? Yes. But pain isn't bad. Pain is pain. Pain ultimately is for us to fix something. That's why we have pain. You have pain in your tooth, so you go to fix your tooth so you don't lose your tooth. You have pain in your heart because there's something for you to fix. So just in the passing of the righteous person already is bringing an illumination to us, bringing, a divine energy that is transformative. But then we need to take it ourselves to the next level, right? And make it a part of ourselves, because that's an encompassing, awesome light. That doesn't mean, you know, what have I fixed myself? So it becomes a, 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 a tool or a means as a result that there's something more that I can dig deep in myself and find a greater depth of moving forward, right? Just like, in a similar manner, when somebody loses a loved one and you sit Shiva. So it's interesting. The custom is on the seventh day. We just had it here last week, and the week before, actually, people sitting Shiva here. And, the seventh day, you sit down after the prayer service, you sat down, um, mourning the loss. And then the custom is that you have to reprimand the person. Get up. You did the mitzvah of mourning for your loved one, but now you have to move forward, go out into the world and, go back into your day-to-day living, and, make a home for God in this world. During the Shiva, you're recluse, you're in, you don't go out, you don't work, don't even study Torah then because of, but then you need to be kind of encouraged. So the customers you have to reprimand. So I say that, my job is to reprimand you because you're feeling the loss and you're feeling the pain, and that's easy to keep you down. And I said, no, you have to get up. I said to them, get up. Right. And you have to move forward. Is there going to be pain there? Yes. But when you move forward, you're moving forward with that person with you, and you now become an inheritor of that person, which means you stand in their place as a result, and you just become something much more. How can you become something so much more if you just lost something so much? Because in the end, death is not a bad thing. Painful. Through that pain that makes us dig deeper inside of us to make us more. And in that more, what it means to be an inheritor on a deeper mystical level, it means I inherit them, their soul. That soul is vested within me, and two things that empowers me, but that also gives me to be their hands and feet, that I now empower them in turn. Whoa. That's what's happening. That's so powerful. That's for all of us, right, with our loved ones. Mm-hmm. But for the righteous, oh, that's different. They affect the entire generation and bring a cleansing for the entire generation. Unbelievable. Okay, Livsha, can we experience this cleansing and atonement down in this world now? Do we experience it? I don't think so. We may get a glimmer of a feel, but we're not experiencing it. No, that's a profound, lofty, yeah. So, John, have we elevated all the holy sparks today? And if not, we're very close. I never said actually we've done it. Good question. Good question, John. Yeah, that we've done it. We just now have to greet Mashiach. Yeah. Yeah, great question. Thank you, John. Folks, a reminder that our matching campaign, charity.com/CZK, is continuing. We are over halfway, and we got to get to the finish line. I need everybody, your help. Many of you have given. I thank you for your kindness. But please inspire others to give. Inspire. You've been inspired here. Pay it forward by inspiring others to help Even, whatever is given is doubled. So if you give $100, that's $200, and so on. Whatever you can give, if all you can give is $18, okay, I say thank you to that. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Are converts, should I say, someone with a Jewish neshama but not a Jewish body, welcome? Yes. Yes, kosher potato. Yeah, absolutely. Converts are amazing people. They chose to be Jewish. That's unbelievable. Metzitza bepeh. Well, we're not talking about that here. Yes, I pray for the Palestinians that they should find proper leadership. Yes, they should find proper leadership that doesn't teach them to hate, but teaches. Some of the great books of Kabbalah, Tanya. That's the one we're learning here, and that's what I suggest. Okay, any other questions? Amazing. Folks, Rambam is coming up. I want to thank you all. A reminder, tonight, 6:30, Torah studies, and TRC at 8.